Hello, welcome to Westmapod, the Christie Time podcast about Agatha Christie's secret identity. I'm Mark Aldridge. I research and write about Agatha Christie a lot, including for my books Agatha Christie's Marble, Agatha Christie's Poirot, and forthcoming The Swinging Christie's book, which you can pre-order now, which I wrote with...
Me!
Yay.
I'm Gray Robert Brown, and I'm a writer, I'm a Christie fan, I'm a Westma fan, and this is episode 4, book 4, The Rose and the Yew Tree.
Yes, a real
Hello.
change of rhythm this week with this book. We are in Torquay. If you can hear noises behind, it's because we are at the bustling seafront. We are slightly dodging out of the wind, but it is a lovely sunny day.
It's fun, isn't it? Yeah, it's like too blustery to record outside without ruining our lovely listeners' ears, but beautiful sunshine as well. So we're sort of looking out onto the sun.
Yes.
And the quite choppy green sea.
Yes, very green. We've just been at the Spring Gathering, the festival.
We have.
The International Agatha Christie Festival holds, I guess, each April. They don't know the last two.
Yeah.
But if you haven't got tickets yet to come and see us in September, there are a few still available.
There are.
So at the time of recording, anyway. So do, go and snag a couple and come and see us.
Yeah, do. And you're doing your own talk as well, and I'm doing mine.
Yes.
So there's 3 opportunities to get some sort of Westmer swinger
and we
energy
just hang
goodness.
Around. Yeah.
We hang around. We're around. We're very easy to get.
Yeah. We're very excited about the book, though.
We are. We've literally just announced it, having sat on the secret.
And just finished it, actually, as well.
Just finished it.
Yeah.
More importantly, more importantly, we've written it.
We do know what we're doing.
What I was thinking was we've just publicly announced it, having sat on the secret of its existence for almost a year. No, more than a year. It's more than a year since I wrote the pitch.
Oh, definitely. Yes.
Because
we signed the contract last summer, I think.
Yeah.
Very excited.
So excited.
Yeah.
So yes, pre-order now.
Yes.
And today, not only are we doing The Rose and the Yew Tree, but this is a bit of they're all significant as entries to the Mary Westmacott canon, but this one's particularly significant.
Well, it's the last secret Mary Westmacott. But we will go into that in more detail.
We will. Stay
shortly.
tuned to find out how the secret of Mary Westmacott was finally uncovered very soon.
In The Rose and the Yew Tree, our narrator, Hugh Norris, is recuperating in the Cornish town of St Loo after a serious car accident. Here lives the charismatic but complicated Major John Gabriel, parliamentary candidate who is popular with locals, especially women. Is John Gabriel what he appears to be?
So in terms of context, we like to start with the context.
We love context.
Our story starts in 1948 this time.
Oh my goodness, I'm so out of era.
I know, we're so used to, for the listener, obviously, over on Swinging Christie's, we're so used to languishing in the 60s, and specifically 59 to 71. So any date that isn't that feels
Do you know, I'm quite interested
unsettling.
in this immediately post-war era, because when I did my PhD about early TV, I was like, my next thing might well be a book about those few years of TV just after the Second World War.
Oh, interesting.
Which I never did.
No.
But Mark Gatiss,
because
I
collared you.
Yeah,
and
you
said,
collared.
Here's
Sometime
17
afterwards.
projects I want to come play with me. Here are 17 projects I want to do, and you went, oh, fine.
But
Mark Gatiss was of the same mind. You
well,
said.
as in his interest in this era, because that's when Bookish is set.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So it's funny that we had this conversation saying about that.
I don't think I've ever told you this, but when I wanted to be a TV writer.
Yeah.
How very long ago that was. I sort of don't really watch much telly anymore, apart from Great British Menu, as we were talking about earlier. But anyway, when I wanted to be a TV writer, the first proper TV script that I wrote was called Flicks, and it was set in a cinema in 1948.
Oh wow!
And the premise was that the cleaner and the caretaker would fall in love, and they both have visions. The cleaner of the past. No, the caretaker of the past, which was 1941, so he saw the Blitz, and the cleaner saw the future, so she saw 2010 or whenever it was I was writing this, 2009. But it was set in 1948, so I did loads of research about that period as well, and I was fascinated in that period. Because, of course, you have the Olympics.
Yes.
You've got the Olympics in London for the last time before 2012.
Yes. Still a pretty good hit rate.
Of course, it's immediately post World War II for Britain. And I want to be clear about this because the book is clear about this as well, which is really brilliant and interesting. World War II is ongoing in Japan when the book is set. But of course, World War II was over for Great Britain by 1945. It can't not. The book is peppered with World War II references.
Because it's set a bit earlier, the book, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's not quite the end of the war when the book is set. There's mention of rationing, which is ongoing even till 1948. And beyond, yeah. But especially in the period we're talking about, the bit where he says, do you think he can get another suit from the Board of Trade?
Oh, yes.
From with his coupons, do you think he can get another suit because his suit is ruined?
It's not sort of rationing we would immediately think of.
Yeah.
When you think about your tiny cube of butter you're allowed or whatever.
Exactly. But do you remember when we went to the Schubert archive in New York and there was all that stuff about rationing the shoes for the play versions?
To get shoes for the play.
Yeah. That's a great episode, the New York episode, which is in your feeds now if you want to check it out, Swinging Christie's feed. But yeah, so we're in a period of post-war consensus, right? Or maybe a lack thereof, the kind of scars of violence and war and terror, fears about funding and infrastructure and how we rebuild the world are rife. It's a fascinating period, basically. I can see why you wanted to spend a bit more time there. This is maybe a pet theory that will evolve through the episode. I think that The Rose and the Yew Tree, published in 1948, is Agatha's personal wrangling with the 1945 electoral loss of Winston Churchill.
Yes.
So we've had the war consensus cabinet, the cross-party consensus. We've had a period of leadership from Churchill. And despite popularity in many ways, the country does not vote for Churchill to carry on.
No.
And the book is quite interesting on this topic. And actually, Gillian Gill is quite interesting on this topic as well. You know, you sent me her book.
I did.
Agatha Christie, The Woman and Her Mysteries,
I think so,
it's called.
She's got that very interesting perspective where it's like Agatha Christie as Mary Westmacott, and she looks at her different sort of strands of her career in life and analyses them separately, which is really interesting.
Definitely. She's really interesting on the Westmacotts. We've referred to her and we'll carry on referring to her on Westmapod. But yeah, she says a 1945 general election was a turning point in modern British history. Churchill and his party were decisively defeated in 1945, and the Labour Party under Clement Attlee was given a mandate to change British society. Christie shows us a Conservative Party at a crossroads, deeply uncertain as to the road to take. The typical equation of political power with high social caste and economic ascendancy no longer holds. I just think that perfectly sums up the context of the book.
Yeah.
But actually, for me, also, I think it ties in with the central metaphor. I think it's the rose or the yew tree. I think it's this or that. I think it's we are at a crossroads.
Yes.
And we can't know, but I'm sure it would have been quite hard for Christie as a Conservative voter and a supporter of Churchill to see the country repay him for his perceived heroism with an electoral defeat.
Yeah,
it's something that a lot of people are wrangling with at this time.
And a lot of anxiety about what the Labour Party was then. And it's quite complex because you can't ever really know exactly how you would feel. But Labour then was much more radical, I guess. It's not like New Labour.
Oh, certainly more than Labour today.
Exactly. So a proper party for the working classes in a way that actually it isn't really now.
It's so fascinating that we have this stiff upper lip perception and we have these stereotypes of history that go, you know, but actually people voted for potentially colossal change straight after colossal change. You know, that flies in the face of all these tired old things that we trot out about, you know, war was instability and people liked crime during war because it was stability within the instability and you knew that the culprit would be captured and all those things that people always say. And this defies that, actually. Yes. And you're very right to say that. I'm glad you said that I think, you know, we know Christie was a Conservative voter. We are certainly not Conservative voters here on the Swinging Christies. But also I think it's important to say that what that meant then throughout Christie's life versus what that means today I mean, the Conservative Party is basically unrecognisable today. And I think Christie's engagement with party politics, this is certainly her most party political book.
Yeah.
But I think her engagement with party politics must be reframed. You know, it's really easy, isn't it, to take your current, or certainly my, like, fury, frankly, with some of the things that the Conservative Party have perpetrated since Christie's death into the reading experience of The Rose and the Yew Tree. But that's not fair, because that's not the world she's talking about.
No.
And we literally see this history play out in the book, right? So it's a bit of a spoiler, sorry for skipping to the end. But I'm quoting from the book. It's a terrific sweep to the left all over the country. Labour's in everywhere. Ours, meaning the catchment of the book, will be one of the few Conservative gains, which is what our antagonist John Gabriel had predicted earlier in the book. I mean, that's exactly what history tells us. What I quite like is Christie almost... Because St Loo, where the book is set, is an anomaly for having voted Conservative when there is this Labour sweep.
Yes.
But it's almost like the tide of history is so powerful that it ends up course correcting even St Loo to Conservative by the end of the book, doesn't it? Because basically one thing leads to another, and Labour, which is the candidate Wilbraham, ultimately gets in St Loo because of what happens towards the end of the book. But it's almost like Christie, because it is a book that hews closely to history, modern history, recent history for her.
Which is a big factor in when it came to be published and went to the publisher, but we'll come on to that.
We will.
Well, let's talk a bit about Agatha's world.
Please.
Because she's been married to Max for some time now, of course.
Yeah.
They married in 1930, and as we discussed way back in the introduction, there is something about the sort of progression of the relationship between Max and Agatha, and maybe other relationships, such as with family members, that we see throughout the Westmacotts.
Yeah, you made the point in the introduction episode specifically, because I was listening to it again the other day.
Oh, nice.
The giant spread happens when they're courting, and every book is published under their marriage. And it's funny because so many of the books are wrestling in a way with her first marriage, but they are all written technically as Agatha Mallowin.
Yes.
Or Mary Westmacott, or Agatha Christie, or and that's the joy, isn't it? She's a woman of so many
thing
guises.
About Giant Spread being just on the cusp, but that she's divorced.
Yes.
So is she Agatha Christie? She hasn't married Max yet.
She's still sort of working it out.
Sort of in between.
Yeah, and you can feel that in the book. It's fascinating.
Yeah. You'd pointed out something about the language that's used, because in 1943, Matthew Pritchard is born, Agatha's grandson. And there's a great story in the autobiography.
Oh, is it in the autobiography?
Yeah.
Hugh says that when he's a kid, Hugh's our protagonist, he says when he's a kid he would announce himself in the third person, coming down, here's Hugh coming down the stairs now. And that's what Matthew used to do as a kid. But what's really interesting is Christie uses that, extrapolates that out in a bit of a moment of crisis for Hugh. And actually it becomes about identity, because he then goes, here's Teresa marrying Robert, here's Teresa, he's like, here's John Gabriel, here's Hugh, here's everything. I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, I don't know what to do with where we are at this crossroads. But I just love that Matthew was the inspiration, the kernel.
Yeah.
His like charm as a kid was the kernel for that, what becomes quite a significant moment in the book. And also publishing around this.
We've got The Hollow in 1946.
I wonder if you can hear the cocktail that's being mixed in the background.
I should say we are in St Loo itself today.
Well, are we?
We'll
get on to that. We're in Torquay.
We're in Torquay.
To be discussed. But yes, around this time, so Christie publishes The Hollow in 1946. Yes. And so many people, we wouldn't be the first people to observe that The Hollow feels, with its kind of the psychological insight of the Westmacotts, were very prevalent in The Hollow, although in The Hollow Poirot interrupts, but people often say, don't they, that I think The Hollow would be better without Poirot, or doesn't need him, maybe.
Yeah, well, Agatha did.
Oh, did Agatha?
Yeah,
right. And is Westmacottish.
There's also Taken at the Flood, which is this same year, 1948, which is explicitly post-war in an interesting way.
It almost jumps away from the war, doesn't it? But we really should have festival organizer and world expert on Taking at the Flood, Joe Barlow, here to explain. But backing into into the late 40s very quickly away from the war, in the way that Murder is Easy and then The One feel very just going into the war, pre-war, and actually the only anomaly there is NRM, there's something really fascinating to be said about the way
her
Christie...
wartime special, as I always call it.
Well, I was just about to say, I think you might have something interesting to say about NRM in a forthcoming something, but I will leave that. But yeah, Christie's relationship to the war, like a lot of people, I think it's very, it's difficult, right?
Yeah.
And I think she was maybe careful about when she went hell for leather in making something a war book. And her publishers had thoughts on that, and there were back and forths and all the rest of it. But I think it's fair to say that The Rose in the Yew Tree is very much a World War II book. So we teased this at the beginning, but excitingly, maybe, Mark, I think we need to drop the word secret from the title of this podcast, because this is, in fact, the final time the Westmacott book comes out as a secret, right?
Yes, absolutely. And to tell that story, I have the receipts. I have the correspondence. I have the
That doesn't
newspaper.
sound like you, having all the receipts to hand.
I've been looking forward to this, but this is like, for me, the peak part of the podcast, because I'm going to give you all of my archive stuff.
Here we go.
Okay, so
buckle up, dear
here's
listeners,
the story as
fans.
we know it, as it's usually expressed, which is her secret identity is revealed in 1949. The Sunday Times, 13th of February 1949, there was a diary column by Atticus, which had a photograph of a very happy Agatha Christie, who probably wasn't very happy when she heard about it. But the column claimed, firstly, incorrectly, that The Rose in the Yew Tree was the first novel by Mary Westmacott, but also said Mary Westmacott is the pseudonym chosen by Miss Christie for her first non-detective story. Now, the next week, Atticus corrected...
We need Kemper's actor klaxon, don't we?
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
We don't. The next week, Atticus corrected the fact that actually he realised that Rose in Yew Tree wasn't the first Mary Westmacott. Should have listened to the podcast.
Shouldn't everyone?
But did say that this makes it all the more amusing that more than one reviewer has greeted The Rose in the Yew Tree as the work of a promising newcomer. I'm not sure if that's actually true, but okay. Christie was very upset by the news. She was in Baghdad at the time, actually, but Rosalind saw it and wrote to Edmund Cork, so Christie's agent, to try and find out what had happened, how it had been discovered. Cork said that he was shocked, but it wasn't anyone at the publisher. It wasn't somebody playing slip at a party, for example, as may have happened with some other secret identities. But that actually it was American reporters had traced the true identity of Mary Westmacott through copyright records.
Oh, how fascinating. Do you mean to tell me that they may have consulted similar paperwork in Washington, D.C. that we were consulting?
Very possibly.
In that episode? How funny, because of course they have different laws about assigning or claiming.
You've got to explicitly request copyright.
Well, also, I mean, good investigative journalism, even though it's ruining everyone's fun.
Well, yes, but there's further things about the story.
Okay, hit me.
So, as I say, Agatha Christie was unhappy, of course, but she did say that Heinemann, her publisher, and we'll come to that, for this book, said that the true identity could be referred to as long as it wasn't too blatant. And she's told Edmund Cork, go ahead on the Mary Westmacott racket. I am sick of opening letters about it, and as the people I really minded knowing about it were my friends, it's really all washed up. Now,
interesting.
In America, the important thing is that in these pre-internet times, it had never been a secret that Mary Westmacott was a pseudonym of someone. So it had actually always been made clear that wasn't a real person. Way back in 1930, the Chattanooga News said that only 3 people know the real name of Mary Westmacott, author of Giant Spread, a novel recently published. Those 3 are the author herself, her agent, and her publishers. Miss Westmacott, an Englishwoman, is well known on both sides of the Atlantic for her novels of another type, and because Giant Spread is so different from those others, she wants it judged on its own merits and not in the light of her previous successes, hence the pseudonym. So, you're almost daring people to find out who Mary Westmacott is for quite a long time. It's
almost like the sort of game that Christie plays with the reader with her puzzle mysteries.
Also, now, the other bit of this puzzle is that we talk about 1949, post Rose in the Yew Tree. In actual fact, in 1944, so the same year that Absent in the Spring was published.
Well, and when Rose in the Yew Tree is set, interestingly.
That's true. several reviews of the book mentioned that Westmacott was alleged to be Agatha Christie in disguise.
So this is reviews of Absent in the Spring?
Yeah, in America. So, Have a Guess in the Buffalo Courier Express was the name of the article. It says September 1944. A neat theatrical novel which has just appeared is Absent in the Spring, which is signed Mary Westmacott. It is now said there isn't any such animal and that the real moniker of the author is secretly guarded by a few people at the publishers. There's a rumour that she is British Agatha Christie, but it's only a report.
British Agatha Christie, like there's an American one, a Canadian one.
Yeah. And Buffalo News said very, very similar. Said to be a nom de plume for Agatha Christie, and several others said it as well. So it was revealed to all and sundry in 1949, but it was an open secret for quite a few years running up to that point.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you for that. I think like so many things, it's never as cut and dried as the story that you get told, right? Like people. I mean, but diehard Agatha fans have known for some time that this is the moment that quote unquote all is revealed. But as you say, really the rumblings were, and I remember you saying, and you probably said it in the Giant Spread episode, you've certainly said it to me in the past, about how there were adverts for Giant Spread directly below adverts for Agatha Christie in the British press, in a sort of like
Agatha Christie was in big letters, Giant Spread was in big letters,
yeah,
but the Passing Mr. Quinn and Mary Westmacott were in small letters.
You draw the line between the dots, Yeah. I mean, you've written here, Christie's freedom to write with the searing honesty that the Westmacott books allowed would soon come to an end. And I think it's interesting what she said about she was really hiding it from the people she knew, and now the cat's out of the bag for most of those. Like, people had guessed, hadn't they, from early Westmacotts. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to speculate, I think, as we move into the next two after this. Does that change who Mary Westmacott is? That's what we're always trying to get to in this podcast, right? Is like, who is Mary Westmacott? Is she no longer able to be so honest? Is she hidebound now? Yes. By the reveal?
I have thoughts, but I'm going to keep them to myself until we get to those later ones.
I do too, and I will too, as we're being cagey. Did wonder if it was worth speculating here briefly, because obviously she says to Cork, like, we'll carry on with, the racket. I wonder if will we get this sense of a dying empire now? Is it past its purpose? Or I suddenly thought, as we were putting together the notes for this episode, is this the reason why we get more Miss Marple and Ariadne Oliver disproportionately with the latter half of the Christie books, because she uses them increasingly as, sometimes, not always, as mouthpieces and ciphers.
An outlet for those
outlets, exactly, because she no longer has need of the Westmacott outlet. But yeah, it would be really interesting to see after this if it represents change. And I wanted to bring back Gil. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, actually. She draws quite a clear line between the first three Westmacotts, so Giant Spread, Unfinished Portrait, Absent in the Spring, and the latter three, so today's Rose in the Yew Tree, Daughters of Daughter, and The Burden, saying that the first three are very much about the events and emotions of Christie's childhood, youth, first marriage, and the best key to her mature years is offered by the later Westmacotts, most especially The Rose in the Yew Tree. It's interesting, I've seen people divide them either slightly earlier or slightly later.
Yes, I think that there's definitely a sense that the last two, the two we're to come to, are slightly out of time with where Agatha is in her own world at that point. Again,
but then surely, I mean, Unfinished Portrait is out of time with where she is in her own world, because she's talking about Archie.
I don't think so, because I think she's working through a lot of stuff in writing the book. Whereas I feel like there's something about A Daughter's a Daughter and The Burden. I mean, A Daughter's a Daughter is obviously from a play that was written quite a while ago by the time it was published, which again we'll discuss in the next episode. But I think they both feel slightly like reheating of ideas that could have been around for a while. Whereas I think there's more of an immediacy, like either because of where she is mentally.
The compulsion to write them, I have to get this out.
Yeah, which we know that she had for Absent in the Spring. This has got to be set in this era and really only works if you write it in this era, I would say. Unfinished Portrait, as has been speculated,
That
may have
splurge.
even come out of psychoanalysis. You know, telling a story in some way.
The therapy of it.
So
that's a good point. I mean, but as you say, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
So structure. What about the structure of it? Well, I guess we have to talk about the title first.
Yes.
Because it's from T.S. Eliot.
It is.
4 quartets. The full line is the moment of the rose and the moment of the yew tree are of equal duration.
Yes, and Teresa, one of the characters, Hugh's kind of confidant, sister-in-law, quotes it towards the end of the book, doesn't she? And I mean, it's a beautiful quote. So obviously the idea there, well, not obviously, it's open to interpretation. Who am I to say? But I guess the obvious interpretation there is basically saying that something feels like it can last forever, but it can be as brief. Time is tricksy, and the gravitas and the import of the yew tree is equal to that of the rose in some ways.
Exactly. Some things bloom fast and, prominently for a short time, and others slowly.
Yeah. The whole way through this project, we've been kind of going, so who is she? Who is Mary Westmacott? And what defines her writing uniquely in a way that it maybe doesn't necessarily not define Agatha Christie, but it's more like, what can we draw out? What can we infer? How can we get more glimpses of Agatha Christie, which is always what we're working towards. And I speculated that maybe because I noticed a yew alleys and yew hedges, a couple of references in Giant's Bread.
Yes,
is there something in that? A little bit of digging. The yew tree, it really does symbolically stand for longevity, but also the inevitability of death. But then also, I guess within that, the capacity for resurrection, and all of this stuff. You'll be able to draw your own parallels between the yew and various characters in the story when we get into it. It's also, interestingly, yew is an ingredient in the Eye of Newton, the witch's potion in Macbeth, which is something that Christie goes back to a lot and quotes a lot. And of course, the rose historically always symbolises romance and love. Yes. I thought it was interesting that, look, Mark, I'm sorry, but I can't stop talking about the 60s, and part of that project over on the Swinging Christies. Sorry. Well, we keep chopping between the two of them. We're very busy and important. Yes. It's very hard to keep track. I've been doing deep dives on Sylvia Plath as part of that project. Oh, yes. And she wrote a poem in 1961, October 1961. I think we can even date it to the day. Called "The Moon and the Yew Tree," which has to be inspired by the same quote, like the composition of that, the same Eliot quote. And she uses the moon and the yew tree. It's usually assumed by scholars to be her parents, to represent her mother and her father, and how they're kind of strong and powerful, maybe intimidating forces. Christie brings this symbolism in at relevant points of the story, some really beautiful points of the story, right? So in particular, a lot of I think I joked in one of our notes or text exchanges that it could have been renamed "Waiting for Rupert," because that does essentially feel like, as it was for many people, you're sort of, you feel like the war's coming to an end, and it's like they should be heading home. They should be home any minute, but letters were inconsistent, and what if the fighting starts up again? And there was a lot of uncertainty, and eventually Rupert heads home to marry Isabella.
Yeah, there we go. Yes.
Isabella, who is kind of the main love interest and main
turns many a
protagonist, turns the heads of both Hugh, the protagonist, and John Gabriel, who's the protagonist / antagonist, depending on which way you look at it. But anyway, at that moment, Isabella and Hugh are having one of their many romantic sort of chats outside, like they do, and Westmacott writes, "Behind her head, Isabella's head, the yew tree outside made a pattern against the sky. She sat there looking beatific." Nice. And similarly, Isabella, and I think at this point, so Hugh, who's narrating it, remarks that it's the most that Isabella has ever said, because she's quite sort of dreamlike and quite, I don't know, her speech sort of waxes and wanes, and it's quite inconsistent, and you're never quite sure where her head is. But she goes on this diatribe about roses. She said, red roses and very dark brown wallflowers, and what she called thick-looking pale mauve stocks. I think it is because they all look as though they would be lovely to touch, rich, like velvet, and because they have a lovely smell. Roses don't look to be by itself in a glass, then it's beautiful, but only for a very short time. There's the idea again. Then it droops and dies. Aspirin and burning the stems and all those things don't do any good. Not to red roses. They're all right for the others, but nothing keeps big, dark red roses long. I wish they didn't die. And then, Hugh/Westmacott says it was the longest speech Isabella had ever made. So again, she's invoking, the centrality of the title is there in the most significant moments of the book, I think.
Yeah. Now, friend of the podcast,
Mystery Steve.
Has he managed to give us any titles in translation?
Yes. Well, actually, I think.
Or is this original research?
No, not mine. No.
Absolutely not.
No, God, no, I don't speak Swedish. We had Mystery Steve on to talk about titles in translation a few episodes back in Swinging Christie's. You should check that out. That's a good one. But yeah, I think he was the one that said that there's The Rose and the Thistle is the Swedish title.
I feel like that should be the Scottish edition.
You're just saying that because we've
had Velma Dermot.
Well, and Abir Mukherjee. We've had a day. We've had a day of Scottish crime excellence.
Thistles are the Scottish.
They are. But it's interesting though, because that does change the metaphor, because that means, to me, romance and pain.
Yes, agreed.
Whereas Rose in the Yew Tree is sort of intemperance and sort of permanence and fleeting moments of beauty. Well, they also call it Isabella in some editions, which, and I think that speaks to her importance as a character, because she really is compelling and really, particularly to the narrator, who is our first-person guide through the whole thing. The Japanese go one further, and I'm getting this from Kemper. This is Kemper's research from... this is in the All About Agatha episode about the fourth man. I think maybe it's a mailbag portion of that episode. But the Japanese title is Isabella Forever. Which takes it one step further.
Sounds like a Rick Astley song or something.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Well, it's extra romantic, isn't it? It's not just... Well, I guess, unlike the Rose, she's not...
Yeah, she's
not got a
enduring in this version, yeah.
Whether or not that is borne out by the story, whether or not she does last remains to be seen. No spoilers. But they also translate it as Dark Embrace.
I love that. That's so cheesy.
I don't know if I like it.
No, it's terrible, but I love it. I think it's a really... you would see that. That is definitely an AI-generated story on Amazon that you can buy.
And you did some digging about the first edition cover.
I did. Because I sort of couldn't remember it. And I looked it up. And in the UK, it's sort of very text-heavy. So it's white text on a red background, red sort of cross, Rose and Yew Tree. But they've got running down the sides, sort of columns, leaves that I did look up as to whether they were Yew Tree leaves. And I think they are just about. They're not... I'm not...
I think they're ambiguous enough that they could also be...
Rose petals
/ thorns even. Which is a clever design decision. But also,
if it was a decision, it's a clever one.
Come on, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, to be fair, also we're still in rationing, so maybe like two colours and mostly just text is kind
that's okay.
We're in austerity.
It's very serious. It looks quite literary.
It looks. I'm only seeing this now, but it's the England flag, essentially.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
which and this is a very English book.
Yes.
Maybe it should be the Cornish flag.
Yeah,
but,
No, that's true. I hadn't thought of it in that way.
And then you also you also looked at the US first edition cover,
which has got what we've referred to as the Golden Girls font. So very cursive, lots of swirls of the Rose and the Yew Tree. And this has just got a small illustration of a woman, presumably Isabella, in yellow. And I think it just looks more romantic. I think that the British one looks like this is literary fiction. Yes. And that one looks like Oh, they're going to fall in love.
The Red UK looks more like a publishing event, whereas yes, the US does look more like they're selling it on the premise of it being a romance, which we'll have more to say about coming soon. But I also think, have you ever read the Mary McCarthy, The Group?
No.
Which is supposed to be, I don't know if this is true, supposed to be like the precursor to Sex and the City, but it gives me that, or like Carol, The Price of Salt. It's sort of giving that.
She's lonely. I mean, she's not with a man or anything, actually.
Good for her.
Yeah,
because they're both cads.
Yeah. But I do also note that it says by Mary Westmacott, author of Absent in the Spring, which implies Absent in the Spring did make some sort of impact. So people go, oh, I like that one. But again, Good Housekeeping. It was in Good Housekeeping.
Yeah.
And that's such a big thing. That's like, Radio 4 picking up your thing for Book of the Week.
Yeah.
It's such a big thing.
Well, and this one was in Good Housekeeping as well, right?
Yeah. So they paid $7,500 to publish it across 2 issues.
And how much is that in today's money?
Well, it's quite a lot.
How scientific of you.
Because Harold Ober, her American agent, had worried that it would be too English.
And how wrong he was. He was just looking at the first edition cover going, well, this is St George Cross. This isn't gonna...
maybe. But what I love about this is that Harold Ober obviously knew, because he was handling it, that Mary Westmacott was Agatha Christie. But Miss Cousins of Good Housekeeping, we love Miss Cousins, whoever she may be, because she was such a fan of Mary Westmacott's work that Cork actually suggested that Christie should meet her when Miss Cousins was coming to London in April 1947.
Oh,
so
lovely.
can you imagine going, you're going to meet Mary Westmacott? No, it's not, it's Agatha Christie.
Oh, that's so
exciting.
Charming. Oh, how lovely. You mentioned it briefly before, but this marks a sea change in the Westmacotts as well, maybe not just in tone, but in the fact that she moves publisher.
Yes.
So this is the first book published by Heinemann, which is now part of Penguin Random House, actually.
Oh, is it?
For.
Oh, right.
Whereas the previous book's been published by Collins, which is now HarperCollins.
Yes. So I think this is, from a modern perspective, so odd. Like, I was thinking about this the other day, and can you imagine Richard Osman's Penguin, right? Mm-hmm. Can you imagine if your work, if Richard Osman came to you and said, I'm still writing my crime fiction, but I've got this other type of books I want to do, can you publish them as well? Penguin would fall over themselves,
I'm
right?
sure.
There is absolutely no way that they would go like, oh, they're only going to sell 20% of his crime fiction.
Yeah, if only to keep that person happy.
Absolutely.
Like, that's just talent management,
exactly.
Right? Like,
you would say, fine, we'll indulge it. Any publisher would go, just give it.
Yeah,
that's
of
fine.
course.
If it keeps you happy.
Yeah.
But no, March 1947, Billy Collins, as in Collins Publishers, Billy Collins.
The Collins.
The Collins, one of the Collins, actually, there are multiples. He writes to Edmund Cork to say, I was so sorry that we didn't feel as happy about this book as you all did. But he said that the theme of the story did really rather worry us. I hope Agatha Christie will understand, which she did. And then wrote to Cork herself and said, do let M.W. be published by someone else. Collins never have appreciated the lady.
Oh.
Next
well,
month...
they were wrong.
Yes.
They've corrected it now, because they do publish them.
They do.
Now.
But Billy Collins wrote to Agatha directly, invited her to lunch, and said that we felt that it was perhaps rather unfortunate having a story around the last general election with such an undesirable person as a candidate at a time like this, which I guess you're talking about post-war instability.
Yeah,
you want stability.
But I sort of do see that logic.
Yeah. Well, Agatha wrote back and said that she didn't think that the book was Collins' cup of tea, her words anyway, and suggested perhaps we'd better stick to crime. And actually, when Agatha saw Billy Collins in June 1949, she did joke to him that if you don't mind, I'll bring my old friend Mary Westmacott with me.
Aww.
Very sweet.
Very good. And so, in terms of the structure of the actual prose, so there are no books, unlike the first two. But like Absent in the Spring, we talked about this last time, it's interesting she doesn't feel the need to separate the prose into parts.
Yeah, and I think that's also, though, this feeling a little bit more mainstream, that I think that can almost be like a slightly intimidating barrier to be like, oh, there are big sections of this book. Whereas this really...
maybe, I was thinking, it's more in the Dickens tradition, in the 19th century tradition, in the more sort of grand old novel tradition, and she's sort of catching up with the times a bit, and it is a bit more stream of consciousness, and yeah, maybe. I mean, so we have 26 chapters, no parts, like I say, but the prelude, which is a framing device around the novel,
Yes.
which she has done in every Westmacott. Is it in Absent in the Spring?
I was trying to think if it was in Giants.
It is in Giant's Bread, because
Okay.
it starts at the concert with Sebastian Levin going, oh, what a wonderful...
No, I don't think Absent in the Spring has one.
No.
No,
But
because we're
Giant's
very much
Bread,
in the moment.
Unfinished Portrait, and this so far. 3 out of 4 is not
Yeah.
bad. But yeah, so it's, and you know, it's not unique to the Westmacotts, but it is something that is a hallmark maybe of that helps us get closer to who she is. There was a radio adaptation in 2020, but no other adaptations
No.
as yet.
I mean, it's
it
bad.
dispenses with that framing device, which I think gives a lot of propulsion to the
Yeah.
novel, as it does with the other Westmacotts that she does it for.
Because you want to know, what are we getting to? Oh my God, why is this person on their deathbed?
Contemporary reviews of the book were mixed.
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yes. Times Literary Supplement said that the pattern of the book is too vague at one point, the later stages of the hero's career, but much material has been skillfully compressed within little more than 200 pages, which is just like, it reminds me of where they're like, the sections of the book featuring this character are
Damning
better...
with faint praise.
Yeah, are better than the rest of the book combined.
Jane Harden. Yeah.
And you just go, oh.
But that is the quote that's
Wow.
still on the back
It
cover of
is.
the modern version. No, I mean, to be fair, that is one of Christie's skills.
Oh,
Like
yes.
compressing huge,
That's why people read
swathing
her.
events and times into pretty brief novels.
That's why people are taking her on holiday and reading her.
That's
because
why I love Muriel Spark, for the same reason. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Yeah, and Max Mallowan, her husband, later said in his memoirs that The Rose in the Yew Tree, in his opinion, was the most powerful and dramatic of all the Westmacotts. And he says, for me, this one is in the classical vein and will not be destined for oblivion. And I think it's fair to say that modern thriller writer / Poirot continuer Sophie Hannah
Yes,
feels
she's
the
very.
same.
Yes, she loves it. She's very
teaches
positive
it,
about it.
right?
Yeah, well, I for a couple of years I went and did sort of a guest lecture discussion about this and Absent in the Spring for a course that she ran at Cambridge, and I remember her shock when she asked people whether they liked this or Absent in the Spring more. That Absent in the Spring won the vote. And she was like, but this is so much the better book. So I think it's really interesting that obviously reading it for different ways and different things for different people.
Well, different people, yeah,
Yeah,
isn't it? Yeah,
but yeah,
I've
she's
got to
a
say
big advocate
I
of it.
disagree. I think Absent in the Spring is much
Oh,
better, but
I do too, but
not
it's,
that that's by the by.
But they're very different books,
And I
so
love,
you can
I
understand
love that there's someone with Sophie's platform championing the Westmacotts. I mean, that's exactly what we want to do and what we are doing.
What I would say is that also, where Max says it's the most powerful and dramatic of all, I don't think it's the most powerful, but it's definitely the most dramatic. Like, loads happens in this book.
Do you
compared
think?
to... Yeah!
There's a shipwreck in Giant's Bread.
Oh, wow.
And there's
Yeah, but there's bullets flying around the place, sudden random murders.
there's Vernon gets hit by a car and forgets who he is in Giant's Bread.
Oh, Hugh gets hit by a car.
Yeah, but at the beginning, Vernon has the decency to do it towards the end.
All right, okay.
But I mean, there is an argument to say, not just because someone of Sophie Hannah's stature is championing it in this day and age, but it is, you know, kind of a significant entry in the canon. The title of it is featured on that memorial statue near Seven Dials, isn't it, in London?
Oh, yeah. Now, Agatha herself did say that this book was one that I can always read with great pleasure, though it was not an imperative like Absent in the Spring. And I think you can feel that
Yes.
she didn't feel the immediate drive, because this is a bit more, like I say, traditional in its
So maybe we are
structure.
already moving into late Westmacott if we're going to
Yes.
carry on that Gill metaphor. Yeah, in that
Yeah.
way, yeah.
But there again, the idea behind the book had been with me for a long time. In fact, since about 1929. Just a sketchy picture that I knew would come to life one day. So 1929 is interesting because she must be working on Giant's Bread around that time. It's a big
Yes.
Wall Street crash in America, so lots of upset in terms of the world feeling like it's wobbling a bit. And yet, as her publisher felt, and I think we would feel, it feels very much like it's stuck in 1945.
I was going to say, that really surprised me when I
Yeah.
saw that you'd found that, because it just feels intensely rooted in that election in a way that, and she's responding to that moment in a way that, you know, like, I don't know, a few years ago, it was like, this is the first Brexit novel. This is the first COVID novel. Like it felt like it felt so of that political moment.
Yeah, I guess that's a universality to this idea of a disruptive
quite
force.
Upheaval is upheaval, right? But also maybe, I mean, we're inferring that the whole thing was there from 1929. Maybe it was the romance plot. Maybe it was the Isabella, Hugh,
the triangle,
and John Gabriel, the character like John Gabriel,
yes,
bit, and the love triangle.
Yes,
you know, maybe a post general strike kind of politician type figure in John Gabriel, and then because 20 years have passed or almost, it's moved on. But it's fascinating to think about. And
I guess the other thing is St Loo, which we may or may not be in, but is clearly coded to be something like Torquay. I would say so.
So it's really interesting, isn't it? Because St Loo has appeared in Agatha Christie.
Yes, because I've made this argument before when I was in doing Sophie's lessons, that I think that this might be the point that if I were a general reader, I'd be like, I think Agatha Christie wrote this.
Yeah.
For me, St Loo is a real giveaway.
Well, and it does fit then that, as you've revealed to us, that we're heading towards a point where the secret is coming out, because this is probably the most blatant, more so than any moment in Unfinished Portrait that feels a bit post-disappearance. But then are we just thinking that because we're these forensic Agatha Christie readers that remember where Peril at End House was set? Because for a lot of people, of course, that's not on the tip of their tongue.
No.
But I do... Well, there's a few things here, right? So is it that this is the first uniting of the Christie-verse and the Westmacott verse? Is it that there are two St Loos? Because, I mean, the St Loo in Peril at End House is also given as Cornwall, right?
Yes.
It's clearly Cornwall in The Rose in the Yew Tree.
Yes.
But it's inspired by Torquay, which is in Devon.
Yes.
But then, I don't know, it's layered, isn't it? Because there are quite a few moments where I felt like there were other Cornwall influences. Like, for example, when Hugh talks of, well, at St Loo Castle. I mean, I can't think of a parallel with St Loo Castle anywhere near here.
Tor Abbey?
Tor Abbey, sure, but it's not
but
like...
no, it isn't.
It's
no,
not on
I'm
the hill
joking,
and it's not on the coast.
joking.
Yeah. And then that's where we do the festival, the Christie Festival.
But
come and get your tickets if you haven't already.
It's not like the centre point that you literally look up to.
But in Falmouth, there's Pendennis Castle, where you can look out onto the water and you can see it from the vantage point of the town, and that's in Cornwall, and that do you know what I mean? It feels, but I mean, I do this as a writer. I think a lot of writers do this. It's the scrapbook approach, and it's a mix and match. It doesn't have to be.
It's sort of your job.
Well,
no, it's like otherwise it's just like
copying.
Truth, copying.
Otherwise, it's non-fiction.
Yeah, it just write up the notes of the local council meeting and be like, "That's local politics for you."
Yeah. It's interesting to speculate, isn't it? Because there is a St Loo reference in Towards Zero, but there's also a Tresillian in Towards Zero and a Tresillian family in The Rose in the Yew Tree. Oh, yes. Are they the same St Loos and Tresillians? They could be. Torquay was traditionally part of what's known as the Blue Wall in the southwest, as in commonly votes Conservative, so that kind of lies there. But then Falmouth, as I said, Falmouth also votes Conservative, generally speaking. And she when she describes St Loo, she says that it's made up of three separate worlds, the old fishing village grouped around its harbour. She talks about there being essentially traces of war refugees with notices in both Flemish and French, which, apart from making us think of our dear Hercule Poirot, that was also true of Falmouth as much as it was of Torquay. And then, yes, she talks about St Loo Castle. But interestingly, I was rereading Boston of Fate the other day.
When are you not? Always in the top of your list.
It's true. But she talks there about how Hollowkey, which is clearly Torquay, used to be a fishing village.
Right.
So even using the same terminology and the same kind of heritage of the place. But it's a very vivid depiction, St Loo, regardless, isn't it? The idea of these different worlds, the castle up on high, the winding roads up to the castle.
I guess that thematically, we can see where there are similarities with this book and others as well. Remember, you noticed that on the Agatha Christie website, they draw a comparison between this and Endless Night. So we're going swinging again, which...
Well, and you say, I mean, we always say on the Swing Christies, don't we, like, what is Endless Night for the first third that you read it or whatever? And, like, there's an argument to say that it's Westmacott-ish.
Yes. Well, another story which involves a young man climbing the social ladder, apparently unaware of the price of his actions.
Yeah.
That's fair. I don't know how unaware they are, to be honest. I think that certainly Michael in Endless Night, he's aware, just doesn't care. Yeah.
Gillian Gill makes the same point. She's become the new Dominic Sandbrook. Right? It's just, ding, 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 he's talking about Gilligan. But yeah, I pulled out a quote from Hugh where he says, everything up to then... He's talking about the accident that leads him as a wheelchair user. Everything up to then in my life, I suddenly felt had been superficial. I was waiting now for something real. But yeah, Hugh is a much more... I mean, he's not particularly likeable, I don't think, but he's a much more benign character than Mike. Both are described as fairy stories. Oh, yeah. So, and I talk about this in the Swinging Christie's book.
Which you can pre-order now.
Yeah, I remember writing about this in the 1967 chapter because we're going year by year, and I got to the Endless Night year and I reread it and I found this warped fairy tale aspect to it which Christie explicitly calls out in the book, which I hadn't not noticed but not paid attention to so much before, is like a fairy tale gone bad, and that is very much that could describe this novel, and indeed she makes explicit, Mary Westmacott makes explicit reference to it being like a fairy story through the character of Isabel, often in this.
Also, in terms of this thing of St Loo and Torquay and everything, that we talked about the geography and stuff, but actually I think there's something about the characters. Like, I assume that Christie knew Torquay society well, and so I wonder how much of it is drawn from that, because if we look at other works like Body in the Library or Murder at the Vicarage, they are very much about the broader institution of how society works and that community operates, whether it's the church at the centre or whatever, all the ways that the characters interact with it in a slightly different way. And I think we get that with politics here, that everyone's interacting with the idea of the election in a slightly different way.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of the similarities between this and other Christie novels, you made a point about gossip. When are you not gossiping, Mark?
I'm not a gossip. I'm just a
You are a gossip.
I'm a purveyor of information.
Do you know who's the worst gossip? I'll cut this out of the episode. Shall I bleep that? Shall I leave it in?
We'll bleep it. Let people guess who was
Yeah. The moving finger is the obvious comparison.
Do you remember Miss Marple turning up at the end of this and going, no, I worked out he's a bad one after all.
So the moving finger, the protagonist, similarly is kind of infirmed out of... Well, so this is interesting. So in The Rose in the Yew Tree, Hugh takes what little mirth he can from the fact that people will say, like, oh, you were a war casualty. And he goes, no, it was the Harrow Road. Yeah. Brilliantly, in The Moving Finger, he's also implied to be a war casualty. In the ITV one, he has a motorbike accident. I thought that was an interesting point where the adaptations start to sort of almost posthumously engage. But yeah, it's almost like in doing so, you know how when the ITV Marple, which is, I think it's fair to say, not particularly popular, when it adapted Endless Night, people said, why didn't you just do
Case of the Caretaker,
because Marple's in that. It's funny how The Moving Finger, which they changed a lot of, starts actually closer to The Rose in the Yew Tree, which has never been adapted.
Yeah,
it's just
that's a very good point. Yeah,
but also Taken at the Flood, as we mentioned before, just in terms of its engagement with the point exactly at the end of the war. And it's something that Muriel Spark does as well in The Girls of Slender Means. There's something about, I will write on this one day because I keep talking about it, but there's something about that we can't look directly at the war. It's like the sun. We can't look directly at the Second World War. The one time we do is NRM, and that's... You have something special. You have more to say about that coming soon, but very, very rarely do we look directly at the war. Almost always do we skirt it, and we find petty little party political squabbles in an outpost in the middle of nowhere, because that's the only way we can really wrap our heads around the monumental thing that's occurred.
Yeah. So themes, we've got themes.
Two themes.
Two themes.
The most prominent two themes we tend to do, don't we? Like the headlines.
Yes. So our first one is about politics and politicking. So the idea of, that you're canvassing in a way and that you're trying to get people on your side. I think that's a fairly obvious thing.
Yeah, the personal politics of politics is ultimately just people relating to each other, right? Like the public who vote and relate and are persuaded, and I think that's, for me, that's the main idea behind this book from Christie, is taking the microcosm of society that is St Loo in this feverish election period and extrapolating out something not just national in terms of an election, but global in terms of the ramifications of the war.
Yeah, and I'd said when we were writing up these notes, I'd initially put, it's unusual for Agatha to be so political, and you quite rightly put, we talk constantly about how she's political, but I mean party political, the idea that she actually embraces like the mechanics of what it means.
I think this
so
is probably
unusual.
the only time that she's party political, and I think when she says she's not political, she's misunderstanding what political is, because I think to engage with the world in any level, to read a newspaper is an act of politics, to write a novel and publish it and disseminate it to millions of readers worldwide, there cannot fail to be social politics or any kind of politics within that and engaging in that. And it's a classic case of her self-deprecation, because she was a lot smarter and more astute than she always gave herself credit. But yeah, I think you're right in terms of the actual mechanics. There are loads of quotes, aren't there, about so for example, Teresa says, "I have confined myself to voting for the candidate who seems to me likely to do least harm." And she also says, "I don't think there's anything to choose between them," meaning
how often
Conservative
do we hear
and
that
Labour.
now?
Well, exactly.
Yes.
They want a downy sort of chap, slick, which is obviously what John Gabriel represents, the kind of orator, the compelling, the Blairite. And again, we talk about that now. We talk about how, I suspect that Ed Miliband would have been a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer, but Keir Starmer to many people looks better in a suit.
Yes.
And ultimately that's what people, same with Gordon Brown, but Tony Blair talked the talk. And it goes on. As far as I can see, the Labour Party is far more frightened of the communists than the Tories are. I don't need to say it, it feels very much like now the Labour Party running in fear of the far left as well as the far right. And also, isn't that what politics really boil down to in the end? What people will believe, what they will stand, what they can be induced to think. I almost paraphrased that a minute ago, actually. That's exactly the politics and politicking thing that we're trying to get at, right?
Yes. Gillian Gill points out that Agatha's conservatism was with a small c, even if she did vote Conservative. She wasn't like an active party member.
No, and this is the distinction you were making exactly about she's rarely party political. It's more just her social politics.
Yeah. She was above all committed to tolerance and compassion in all aspects of life. We can see that, obviously. And she feared that the militant orthodoxies of the 20th century, fascist as well as communist, would prove less tolerant and less compassionate. Well, could I recommend a podcast called The Swinging Christies, in which we talk at length.
It sounds really cool and sexy and funny.
I know. I just wish they'd release a book. I'd love to give
Wouldn't that just be the dream?
A pre-order.
Oh my God.
But yes, we see this, lots of her 60s books as well. But I think the politics that we see in this book are much smaller in lots of ways, and you can really tell that she's someone who's used to town living, as in not city, not tiny village, but she understands that there's a hierarchy which is often old-fashioned and might be generational rather than it being earned, which is still the case now in lots of smaller communities. There are big families, and there are people who've always been there and always been, on the council or whatever. And John Gabriel, our prominent politician in it, is deceptive and inscrutable.
So this is the guy that they're putting up for election.
Yeah,
who turned Isabella's head.
Yeah,
and has a sort of frenemy relationship with Hugh Norrie's protagonist.
Yes,
is that fair to say?
I guess at points. Certainly a very variable one. Hugh's never very enamoured, I think.
No.
Because he's baffled by him.
Yeah.
They see things so differently. And John Gabriel sees these things. Like the whole world has to be manipulated to his gain. that's what it's about, and it's like that is the ultimate outcome. And dare I say, to make a Tory into that character,
it's not very big C conservative of
and
her. It shows her
it's
willingness to be nuanced and
Yes.
fair, and yeah, completely. Well, I mean, I see. It's funny. I find John Gabriel much more interesting, slightly likable character than I think some people do. I see what she's doing. She's doing that Siegfried in Passenger to Frankfurt thing. And I think we'll return to this in The Burden, won't we? This idea of like the messianic Gabriel is like that. And she twists it by making him ugly. And she talks all the time about how ugly he is.
Yes, she does.
And yet his passion and his charm is so beautiful. It's so compelling for so many in the community. You know, people feel he cares, and the little chat they have where he basically confesses to premeditatively wanting to get a VC, a Victory Cross, when he joined up. And Hugh quite snarkily a bit later says most VCs are posthumous, which I'm sure
hoping,
is Westmacott's way of going he wishes he was dead, or certainly gone. And there's that brilliant bit, isn't there, where there's the character of Mrs. Burt, who also is one of many who idolises John Gabriel. And Westmacott writes, Mrs. Burt was looking at John Gabriel, seeing him against a background of no particular place, just as a figure against a war landscape, desert, heat, shots, blood, staggering over open country, a film landscape like the picture she'd seen last week. You know, to depict him like the sort of ultimate war hero that Agatha has probably seen in a flick at the Paint and Picture House just down the road from St Loo, is really evocative. And it made me think about how much more filmic prose is becoming in this period. Now we're moving into this point where films are so much more ubiquitous.
Class is another important aspect of this story, isn't it? Because, like I say, small town politics, it's going to be a really important thing.
Yeah. I like the way they continually refer to... So Lady Tressilian, who's I guess the classiest that we have in the book.
She is a lady.
So I hear. But she says of John Gabriel, the downside is that it's a pity that he's got such common legs. And Hugh says, I knew what she meant, and he sort of speculates about what it is that gives you away that you're common in the leg. But it's a great metaphor that Westmacott chooses because, of course, Hugh no longer has the use of his legs. No. I felt like Hugh's depiction as a disabled character was quite layered and quite interesting. And I think this is one way in which that reading is drawn out. Even like, you know, the common metaphor, we all use it, to stand for an election is emphasised because, of course, that contributes to this metaphorical spot and Hugh's disability and his incapacitation to enact the agency on the plot that he maybe wants to.
There's a really unusual and very memorable moment in the book, isn't there, where a child falls into the harbour and John Gabriel jumps straight in even though he can't swim. And it's this way that you can read it in multiple ways. The first is to say, what a hero, even though he can't swim, he goes and tries to rescue this child. Or there is a perhaps more practical response, which is, he's creating a bigger problem.
He's not fit
but
for
he
office
looks
because
like a hero.
Yeah.
He's making it look like he's doing well. All he's doing is making things worse.
But also in that classic way of, I say this as someone that can't swim, as we talk about on the podcast all the time, lol. But he's accidentally showing himself up as inadequate for office because he's not quite up to the job.
Yeah,
he's not quite up to that job.
Yeah, and he'll go for it, but he won't be able to succeed.
You're completely right. And the same incident she cleverly repeats with a similar incident with the dog later in the book. But there is some speculation that he might have given the child a shilling to throw itself into the harbour. And you're not... I mean, Gabriel is appalled at that suggestion, but you're kind of invited to believe that he's not beyond that necessarily. No. So Hugh's pressing him as to what he would have done if nobody was spectating, right? Yeah. And Gabriel says if there had been nobody there to see what happened, he would have run and got a boat and rowed the boat round, implying that he wouldn't need to be seen as
the big hero.
Yeah. in the dramatic way that diving into the splash of the water makes him. It wouldn't benefit him in the long run because there wouldn't be spectators. And this is what literary novelists do, is they give you these moments of metaphor and these microcosms that you're supposed to extrapolate out and understand the wider novel on the basis of that moment. And that's exactly what Westmacott's doing. It's a testament to the quality of writing, I think. It also made me think, though, I wonder if you were confused by my notes here. It feels to me like, speaking of how politics haven't really changed, it feels to me like those moments that win or lose an election, like, so Gordon Brown saying that she was a bigoted woman is seen now as like that was the moment when he lost that election, or like Ed Miliband doing the gravestone of the commandments of what Labour would do, or eating a bacon sandwich weirdly, or I don't know, the bus with the promise false and proved to be false, and ultimately still yet to materialise promise of millions of pounds of funding for the NHS if we leave the EU, was seen to be the moment that won the Brexit vote for the Brexiteers. And it's those moments, you know, Christie knows that. She knows that it's those moments in communities, the headline news, that strike people to their heart and they make them vote a certain way. I think that's a great example of it. And the moment when Mr. Burt accosts Gabriel, there is speculation in the novel. Is that the bit that we will then look back on and go, he lost that election because of his altercation with Mr. Burt?
Yeah.
You know, she knows all this. She's so plugged into politics, not only in 1948, but seemingly in 2026.
I guess that more broadly, to round this section off, we can see it as an allegory for history's contrary positions on Winston Churchill, who obviously is seen very differently by different people.
Well, today, I mean, we talk about him today as I have very conflicted feelings about Churchill. I think many people do. I think he's been reevaluated since Agatha Christie died as a sort of imperial villain, but also as a war hero. It just felt like that was in dialogue with who John Gabriel is.
Yes.
Reading this book.
Complex.
Yeah, and Churchill, of course, is directly name-checked, and people do discuss he's attributed to, quote, winning the war for us.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, kind of what you hear patriots even today kind of saying now. But then Hugh says he ought to sit back and write his history of the war. He's one of the best writers of our times, and have a nice rest while Labour mismanages the peace. So it's interesting, Churchill actually publishes the first volume of his World War II history, which he does then write as Hugh Norris is anticipating in the book. He publishes it the year after when the book is set. But obviously Westmacott knows that, writing in 1948. So we're back from dinner, and lovely dinner.
Really nice. Shall we recommend it?
Well, how do you say it?
Oh no, it's a really good.
It's the Turkish
Greek.
That's like on the seafront, basically, in Torquay.
It's lovely.
Oh my God, go!
It begins with an E.
I famously order too much. Shout out to friends of the podcast, Andrew and Marcus. But it was worth it. Everything was really brilliant.
Yeah.
Anyway. Back to the important order of the day.
Now that we're filled up.
So famously, the Mary Westmacotts were, I think we've pretty roundly said on the podcast, it's discrimination and erroneous, but they famously have been described historically as romances.
Yes, so as indeed my 70s book of this shows, which we all put up on our Instagram. But I think that this is the closest they get to being a romance.
I would agree with you. Is this the one that gives them all the reputation for being these somehow romantic novels? Which, by the way, is to say, I mean, it's not romantic in the sense that it doesn't end happily ever after for one couple.
No.
So even then, you're going, I mean, it deals with love as a theme, but it's not like Mills and Boone. No. I don't know.
The reason why it feels more like a romance is because it has got that central trio, the central triangle, as we know is so common in Agatha Christie. But here, Mary Westmacott is presenting it to us. And I think that there is something about the way that Isabel is used as a pawn between the two dominant male characters that is typical of some romances of this era, but also quite atypical of Agatha Christie, I would say, is that she's an unusually passive character, but that is sort of the point. That it's not like that she is just because that's what women are like, in quotation marks, but because that's her function, is that she's so sort of bewitched by John Gabriel in particular that she can't fight against his power.
And doesn't really understand what it is that's bewitching her, what it is that's pacifying her, until of course he does, until of course she turns around and goes, I'm going off with John Gabriel, and then it's a complete, but because we only see the novel through his eyes, we can't see that either, because he can't see that. We're led into the world solely by him. Which
is so unusual. Now, I know I'm immediately going to tell myself that there are loads of other examples of this, but the fact that, like, the failed part of the triangle, the person who doesn't get to be part of most of the action is the narrator, feels quite anti-romantic at the same time, that it's about loss and confusion, this real thing about Hugh just really not understanding John Gabriel.
You said it feels like the most mainstream of the Mary Westmacotts to you.
It does feel like that to me. It feels like the one that has got a sort of structure and a set of characters that I feel doesn't have to be Agatha Christie. And I feel like with the other ones, the Mary Westmacott side of Agatha Christie, it had to be her writing it because it was a facet of who Agatha Christie was.
Well, I think you made the point, and several other people have made the point about Unfinished Portrait when we were in Tenerife, when we recorded that. That really the joy of reading that book lies in the fact that it's an insight into Agatha Christie, which is our perspective from 2026, reading those books, knowing it's her. You don't need that, I guess, as you're saying, for The Rose and the Yew Tree.
I think so, and I think there's something just a bit more straightforward about a lot of it. I was also saying to you that I feel a bit like if your publisher had gone to you and said, Absent in the Spring, we love it, it's done really well critically, but maybe we could get the next one stocked in Tesco? Like, could you just make it a little bit more mainstream, a little bit like more people are likely to want to read a slightly more plot heavy, or a lot more plot heavy story, frankly, compared to Absent Spring, which is no criticism of Absent in Spring.
No. But the point of that is almost that nothing happens within the book because everything has happened before it.
Absolutely. So there is a sense to me, I don't think Agatha Christie has to be the person writing this book. I think someone else could have written it, which so far on our Westmapod journey, I don't think you could say of any of the other books, really.
No. In my other guise as working in audiobooks, I did an edition of The Castle of Otranto, like an 18th century, very early novel. It was part of our classics range. And I really vividly remember that when I was sort of looking up about the book, it's described as a romance. It's commonly described as a romance. There is nothing romantic about it. But there's something about, in the same way that you would say art or aesthetic is romantic without necessarily meaning like a man and a woman in love.
Yeah.
And the same way that, like, I don't know, I think there's a connection like with roman, as in French, like to this day you still say, like, there's something about romance and romantic that we've funneled it into this narrow definition in today's society, meaning a rom-com, and actually that's not all that word traditionally encapsulated. And maybe, just maybe, having said that everyone who calls the Westmacotts romance are basically sexists, maybe I'm rowing back on that and saying maybe there is something broader about the word romance that's supposed to mean an aesthetic and a mood and a time and a collection of themes that does fit both Rose and the Yew Tree and the others.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting perspective.
If we're talking about straight romance,
which we rarely do.
I meant down the line romance, not heterosexual romance, although it is also that. Although maybe, I don't know, I'd have to read it again. Is there something in the surprisingly passionate hatred of Hugh to John Gabriel that's homoerotic in some way?
It's funny because I did read it seeing if that was a reading when I was rereading it this time, and I don't think so. I don't think it is. I think it is much sort of more complex than that, because it's this whole thing about everything I see in the world is one way and he just doesn't fit into.
No.
You know.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because we made the comparison to Endless Night. You could easily make John Gabriel more like Santonix and then have that kind of relationship if Hugh is our Mike. Do you know what I mean? But actually, no, I think you're right. I think he's more a bystander to the outpouring of love that John Gabriel seems to receive from all other quarters, and what maybe makes Hugh Norris unique, and that is why we are privileged to get his perspective, is because he's the only one that doesn't just unreservedly adore him without caveat. Or I there's a chapter really early on which feels like a whole Mary Westmacott novel boiled down into one chapter. It could almost be the previous book to this book if this was a sequel, which is Hugh and Jennifer getting to know each other, and it's a rom-com. You know, they get together, they're charming, they're sweet, and then towards the end of the chapter he has an accident and he basically ends up saying to her, go and live your life, don't be kind of hampered by me. But even, I drew out the quote, we met and partied and met again. We met at parties, in other people's houses. We met at small, quiet restaurants. You know, it's so quintessentially romantic in a way that...
That's the montage.
Yes, exactly.
That's at the beginning. Yeah, we're there 20 minutes into the film and we've got to get sent. They've got to know each other.
Definitely, yeah. And you cycle through all that in a chapter. It's such skill. I mean, that's what that critic was saying about her brevity.
Skillfully condensed.
Yeah. But also, as a fellow Dennis Potter fan, I wonder if you thought of this. The moment they come together there's a moment where they're on the train to Penzance, which is depicted on the cover that I have. I think you have as well, actually.
I've got multiple. The one I've got with me is the 70s one with the cheesy romantic cover.
Oh, nice. The modern one has got that Penzance train. But she feels guilty about having pride in public, and he is sort of guilty that he noticed and called it out. And that happens in The Singing Detective.
Oh, yes.
And I mean, throughout The Singing Detective, Dennis Potter refers to Agatha Christie, particularly the murder of Roger Ackroyd. It's not beyond the realm of possibility that he read the Mary Westmacott as well. So, but that is just a kind of classic romantic trope as well.
What about Isabella? What was your feelings about Isabella as a character? Then I always said that she's in some ways quite passive, but that isn't.
Well,
that's what it is. She's.
I think you're right, because she is passive until the point at which she is really blooming active. Yeah. Which is the end. Yes. Right? Which is when we find out.
That's
we literally find out
get.
on the last page that it turns out that she, according to John Gabriel, that her action was very decisive in the kind of final bloody confrontation of the novel. So I think that's clear proof that Christie's making her passive in the run-up is a deliberate character choice. I love the scene where Isabella very kindly puts her scarf over the pills that Hugh reveals to us that he's been squirreling away in case he wants to do himself in, basically. So he has a way out. And Teresa comes in and goes, I'll pick up your scarf. And she says, oh, no, but I just thought the colours of my scarf looked lovely against the grass. Yeah. It's such a romantic image, but it's such a vivid moment in the book. For me, that's like the child going in the harbour scene. It's like the cowpat moment. There is these bits of real vivid imagery peppered throughout the book that really sing.
Yes, having just said, I don't think Agatha Christie has to write this book. Actually, that's a really nice example of where you've got to have her skill to make those little moments pop.
Yeah, true. So they're sleeping pills, essentially. A key aspect of plots like Destination Unknown, like Sleeping Murder. There's Veronal in Lord Edgware Dies, and Cards on the Table. She refers to Seconal and Amatil in this book, which, as far as I could see, she's not referred to specifically that barbiturate in other books. I'm using Catherine Harkup for this, of course, A is for Arsenic, and V is for Venom. But it still feels probably the closest we get to... we spent a lot of time with Kemper last time talking about the aspects of Absent in the Spring that almost veer close to becoming a detective novel and then don't.
Oh, yeah.
And it feels like this one doesn't have so many of those.
No.
But that is one moment where you go,
But it has got thrillery bits towards in the second half and the final act, really. Yeah.
Well, speaking of, so we've alluded to it, but there's basically Isabella is ultimately shot because there's a student protesting in opposition to a fictional Slovakian dictator. And I mean, again, like the ending of Giant's Bread, I think this could be unfairly lampooned as a tip into melodrama. For me, this is a great skillful evocation from Westmacott of bringing, you know what we said in the previous theme, bringing the global machinations into the personal. So it's like these seismic continental wars and conflicts and debates come down to a woman caught in the crossfire.
Yes.
Like the cost of an individual life.
And it's worth just saying quickly, because we'd mentioned before about questions of how reliable the narrator is, whether Hugh is a reliable narrator, that this is one of the things that Sophie Hannah advocates for, is the idea that at the end, because she points out quite rightly how often he coincidentally happens to be at places when things happen.
Oh, right.
And she's like, well, is he actually a bit of a stalker? Is he actually actively seeking out these things? Did he actually follow them? So I think that's quite an interesting idea, that actually Hugh is telling us what he wants us to believe happened, and that actually an examination of the plot makes you go, actually, you do seem to be central to quite a lot of these things that happened. Are you finding a way to justify that you weren't responsible in some way for mixing things up, making them want to escape you, all of this?
Well,
stuff?
it becomes Death on the Nile, right?
Yeah.
I can see there's clear precedent in Christie there. I like the fact that it's not, for all of John Gabriel's many faults, it's not his politicking that gets them in the end. Do you know what I mean? It's the cruel irony that it's her that gets cut. But it's like, it's incidental. It's nothing that he did. He just so happens to look like this guy and he's mistaken.
Yes, it's so weird. And I remember when I reread it a little while ago, thinking like, is it really that straightforward? Like, is there something I'm missing here, that there is more to it?
Maybe if you follow Sophie's reading,
has he been set up? You know, is it actually true that that's why the shot was fired with Hugh actually?
I think I'll have to reread this again now.
Yeah, there you go. And then you should listen to Westmapod. I think they've done a whole episode about it.
Wait, what's that?
Oh, I don't know. It's just a couple of gays.
Oh,
I know. I can't bear it.
They sound awful.
Ugh.
I mean, I don't mind them being what they are, but they have to rub it in our faces.
I know, and they're everywhere. And Agatha Christie.
A very romantic set piece twists quite quickly into something I read as a lot more sinister, was the scene in and around the Long Barn, which has got to be the Spanish Barn.
Oh my God,
Which is where the events happen at the Torquay Festival.
Yes.
It's Torquay, it's not Falmouth. So that's one up for Devon versus Cornwall in the big
if
St
you're
Loo
keeping
debate.
score,
For those of you football fans that are listening, because I'm sure we pick up many. There's the imagery of kind of two people silhouetted and Hugh's looking on, and he doesn't quite know which two it is that are sort of having this tryst, I guess, away from the dance. And then it turns out it's Gabriel and it's Isabella. But I think and I'd be interested to hear if you read it the same way. I felt like there was a real ambiguity about whether they had sex that was consensual in that moment, or maybe not full sex, but whatever happened was, he says, they had a great time. Hugh asks Isabella, is it all right? And he says something like, I don't really know why I asked that or what I meant, but it was kind of instinctive in this moment, in one of their many romantic moments in the fresh air outside in the night. With the moon and the stars, and she says, I don't know. And the scene is described as dreamlike and unreal, and then they hold hands for the first time, and maybe the last time. It's it feels like the closest they've ever come to getting together, but it feels like it happens after this moment.
Yes,
that is
open to interpretation.
Definitely open to interpretation, but brilliantly written. The ambiguity of it, and how layered it was.
And I think, before we finish speaking about Isabella, we've got to mention the most, I guess, famous scene, the most memorable scene with her, I would say, which is where John Gabriel discusses with her in front of Hugh about this idea that Isabella can withstand pain, and John Gabriel tries to disprove this.
I was going to say, if only it were a discussion, it becomes very physical.
Well, that's it, 'cause it starts with that. And then Hugh tells us, I had laid my cigarette down. With a quick gesture, he, that's Gabriel, leaned across me, picked it up and brought its glowing tip close to Isabella's arm. She did not flinch or move her arm away. Revolted by Gabriel's savagery, I could do nothing to prevent it. I saw Isabella's face slowly whiten with pain. Her lips closed tight. She did not move. Her eyes looked steadily into Gabriel's. And eventually, with a quick movement, he tossed the cigarette into the fireplace. I apologise, he said to Isabella. You can take it all right. That obviously is abusive, but it's abusive on multiple levels. There's obviously the physical abuse there, but it's also the fact that forcing someone to prove...
He's like testing
that,
her.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
But that, I think, and that, I can't remember whether that comes before or after the long barn scene, but it is a similar scene in the sense that there's clearly something really quite dark and potent between them, and that maybe makes it slightly more explicit than the long barn scene does in terms of how much John Gabriel forces his person onto her. It's just, but I mean, my God, what incredible writing.
Yes,
and,
really.
And emotionally ambiguous in a way that I think people think Christie doesn't necessarily do.
Yeah. So, Gray, if we enjoyed this book, which we have, what should we try?
Why are you looking at me so intensely?
I don't know, because
it's the regular...
It's been a really long day.
It has. It's 9:20. It's the regular section. If you like this, try that. What occurred to me as a recommendation is relevant to friend of the podcast, Mark, the other Mark, the only other famous Mark Gatiss, who... Did you see him in The Vote a few years ago?
I don't think
About 10 years ago now. So this was a play by James Graham that was on at the Donmar, and they screened it, I think, live on... I think I'm right in saying it was on the night of the referendum.
Oh, my God.
And it was set in a community centre. Nina Sasanya was in it as well.
I think I did see it,
Fear Her,
actually.
and Teachers.
Yes.
And Mark was brilliant in it, of course. And it was a great example, I think, of capturing that moment where a country is on a precipice and you don't know which way it's going to go. Although actually at the time I think we felt like we knew which way it was going to go, and then it did not. But maybe people felt like that in 1945, I don't know. But anyway, that way of capturing that political crossroads and the personal dimension to the national and international machinations, it's all there in that play. I know it's not for everyone to read a play script, but if you can, seek it out, because it is brilliant.
And I was thinking about, as ever, it's sort of crime or gay. For me, I was thinking about stories that have got these sort of some
or gay crime, like The Craze.
And I don't know why these sort of instinctively came to mind, but I was thinking of the P.D. James novel A Taste for Death and Ruth Rendell's The Secret House of Death, which is a terrible title, but quite a good book. But what I was struck by in both of them was about sort of surface appearances and the sort of slow reveal of actually what might have really occurred. And in the Ruth Rendell one, which is much, much shorter, it's sort of revealed to you quite quickly about, basically, there's a whole thing about whether this person in this little cul-de-sac, this housing estate, someone dies and then there's somebody even having an affair, or was something else actually going on. And that's all resolved quite quickly. But in the P.D. James book, Taste for Death, there's so many characters that you're slowly introduced to and that you have to really work out their relationship, and you don't know which ones are going to be important, which ones aren't. And for me, there's a slight sense there that if Agatha or Mary Westmacott had expanded this even further, I feel like we would have got more subplots that wouldn't have actually had any impact on what John Gabriel and Hugh Norrie's and Isabella's story is. That was always going to be the same.
Yeah.
And I always quite enjoy it when I read a book and I'm never quite sure what the main plot is. Like, when there's no one thing is going to get you to the end. So yeah, they were just instinctively the things I thought of.
Yeah, I think a longer version or a sequel perhaps would expand on the other people in the community.
Definitely.
Because really you get the Berts.
Who are some of
and
the
you
most
get
interesting people in the book.
The Castle people.
Yeah.
And the Carslakes. Absolutely. On the basis of this book, we're trying to pin down the unique formula,
whether she likes it or
the
not.
fascination behind who is this fantastic writer that we're indulging. What is it that characterises Mary's writing? What do you think, based on this book, accumulative to the other three we've read at this point?
So I thought that there's a really strong sense that she understands the power of instinct. I think we've seen that in other books as well, but particularly here. And it made me think a bit about the thing that we rarely discuss, which is her disappearance, which clearly was very driven by instinct because it wasn't something she made a huge rational choice about. And I wondered how much we can see that in all three main characters, but especially Gabriel and Isabella in this one, that they are driven to do what they do without necessarily being able to explain it, and certainly without being able to justify it even, really. So that was my main thought, someone who understood instinct and how powerful that can be. What about you?
So I feel like I've sort of abandoned my Yew thesis, Yew Tree, not as in you as a person, Dr. Mark Aldridge. I'm just really enjoying this process of going through them and going, what is it that unifies these 6 books? There must be things. My latest idea, and I'll be interested to see if this is borne out by Daughters of the Daughter and The Burden as we finish off this project. We talked a lot last time about her awareness of psychoanalysis. That's very much borne out by Unfinished Portrait as well, and this sense of stream of consciousness. And I talked about Virginia Woolf, and there was the machinations of people, couples relating to each other, passing, loving in circles and squares. I suddenly thought, and I've just started a Daughter's Daughter for next time as well, and that's kind of sustaining the thesis too. And I went, are these her Bloomsbury novels? Are these her attempts at contributing to the literary tradition which comes out of the time just before Giant's Bread? So it makes sense in terms of timeline. This modernism and this writing in more stream of consciousness styles, thinking more about psychoanalysis, thinking more about deconstruction, loving in circles and squares, those ways that the characters relate to each other and circle each other. I wonder if there's something in that I may pick up on next episode.
Well, there is actually unusually a review of this book that does start to make a connection between different Westmapod
Finally,
titles.
It's not just us saying who's Mary Westmacott, but the critics have caught up.
So the Evening Star, which is Washington DC newspaper, the reviewer said that, like Absent in the Spring, Mary Westmacott's previous novel, The Rose and the Yew Tree, has a quality of quiet distinction. It is as fine as needlepoint, with each detail carefully stitched to give colour and outline to the whole pattern. That's nice.
Wow.
That seems fair
nice
to me.
And true, and what a great notice. I think you could say Unfinished Portrait has the same sense. It will be interesting to see if we get the same impression from the 2 novels we have to come.
Indeed.
Please do read along with us. So 2 weeks from today to read A Daughter's a Daughter, the novel. 2 weeks after that we'll be doing the play version, but in 2 weeks' time we'll be doing the novel, so do check that out. Each episode drops every other Tuesday, and do let us know your thoughts. Keep messaging us, keep sending us pictures of your copies and where you're reading them, where in the world you are, where in the world you're listening to us, where in the world you're reading us. We just met a listener from Estonia.
We did, yes.
Lovely listener from Estonia.
And we met someone from Argentina.
And we met someone from Argentina.
Who just came to our talk, yeah.
So please do let us know where in the world you are, and send us pictures of pretty views next to Christie copies. It's
we love to see it.
We love it. And do, of course, we've said it already, but I'll say it again. Pre-order the Swinging Christie's book at all good retailers. It'll be out in hardback and ebook and audiobook. And do stay subscribed over on the Swinging Christie's feed for more episodes there every month. And please rate and review and subscribe.
And do get in touch. You can find us on Instagram at Christie_time. Our Blue Sky account is at ChristieTime.com, which is also our website. You can find us on YouTube at Westmapod and The Swinging Christies at The Swinging Christies. Gray's website is grayrobertbrown.wixsite.com/GrayRobertBrown. You can email us at ChristieTimeProd@gmail.com. My Instagram is at Dr. Mark Aldridge, and my Blue Sky is markaldridge.info, which is also my website address.
Westmapod.
Westmacott.
Where's he gone?
Westmacott.
My mum cackled at that. She loved it.
That's the only reason I did it.
Yeah, that's the only listener we need to please, really. Sorry to everyone else.
Thanks for listening. Westmapod is a Christie Time project by Dr. Mark Aldridge and Gray Robert Brown. This episode was recorded on location in Torquay in Devon on the 12th of April 2026. Our artwork was designed by Tom Double and our music is by Dar Golan. Sorry. For the Coda, hilariously, Mark just encountered a lovely couple who thought we were famous because we're recording and said, I've known a lot of famous people like the Crays.
Yes.
We're like the Crays, Mark.
Yeah, I know. He did say that for my sins. Fred Dinage knew the Crays.
Say again?
Fred Dinage. You probably don't know him. Was a TV presenter. Still is a TV presenter.
Diana Ross. But do you think we are, in many ways, Mark, Dr. Mark Aldridge, I think we are the Crays of the Agatha Christie world.
Well, we terrorise people and we're both gay. Oh no, I think only one of them was gay.
Gay and violent. Very good, there's the Coda sorted.
Yeah, but you knew Peter Cushing. That's what and I went, oh, Doctor Who.
That's very cool.
Yeah, he said he was good friends with him.
Wow. When did he die, Cushing? Not the guy you were speaking to. Presumably he's still alive.
90s?
Unless you're imagining things.
But he had a long decline because he was so devoted to his wife, although he had lots of affairs. But he was devoted to his wife, and his wife died in the early 70s. His health immediately hit, so he always said he wanted to go back to be back with her. So
why did you look at me when you said long decline?
It's been a few years, Greg.
I'm deep in it.
Honestly, if we do a compare and contrast.
Oh my God! Yeah, you know, like when they're like the picture of Tony Blair going into Downing Street, picture of him coming out.
Yeah, exactly.
Post Christie world, post Christie time.
Yeah.
Aged. The Greys. Anyway, Greys got Greys. Anyway.
So, we are always looking to see if there are any autobiographical elements in the Mary Westmacott.
Yeah, it's like a treasure hunt, isn't it?
Yes.